All right. Good afternoon or good morning. My name is Nicole Lapenta. I am a summer associate with Haller and Sage. And today we're here to talk with Ken Slater and Rich Roberts, two of Haller and Sage's municipal lawyers, to discuss how the COVID-19 crisis has impacted municipalities across the state. Over the years, Haller and Sage has represented more than half of the 169 towns and cities in Connecticut, either directly or as general counsel, special counsel, or through a municipality's insurance carrier, and today has the largest general municipal practice of any firm in Connecticut. Ken and Rich are going to talk with us about their involvement in Connecticut's response to the COVID-19 crisis and discuss the challenges faced by towns and cities across the state as they adapt to these rapidly changing circumstances. The governor's office has released a series of executive orders that are changing the way that our towns and cities function. Both of you have had the opportunity to assist the governor's office in drafting these orders. Ken is here to discuss the orders involving public meetings and outdoor permits for restaurants. And Rich is here to discuss the orders involving elections and town hall meetings. So if you're ready, I would like to start with Ken, and we can talk about public meetings and outdoor permits for restaurants and retail. Can you tell us what challenges municipalities are facing when trying to hold public meetings right now?
Oh, you heard an unexpected phone call come in. I'm going to throw another curveball at you. I put that on mute, but we thought it might make sense for Rich to cover briefly some of the overall orders to set up a little bit of context of the ones that deal specifically with the land use. So if Rich could jump in now, you can come back to me.
Please, yeah.
I think the important ones are primarily 7B, which kind of sets up the protocol for holding meetings virtually, because we generally don't want to have large numbers of people gathering in sweaty auditoriums to participate in public meetings. So over the last month, last couple of months, many of the public meetings have either been suspended if there's no need to have them, or to the extent that boards and commissions need to have meetings, they've been done on virtual platforms like Zoom and WebEx and so forth. And the key things about it are, in order to have a virtual meeting that's roughly compliant with what would be expected under freedom of information, you provide notice to the public of the meeting and the manner in which it's going to be held, whether it's a conference call or a Zoom meeting, and how to log in. You also post on the town's website not only the agenda, but the items that are going to be discussed at the meeting, so that people will have an opportunity to review it in advance. Then you have the meeting, people can participate to the extent that they need to. Whether it's a public hearing, you need to have the public be able to speak. If it's just a public meeting of an agency with no necessity of public involvement, they have to be able to at least hear, if not see and hear in real time, what's going on. And when votes are taken or statements are being made, all of the participants should identify themselves for the record, so you know who it is that's speaking. And then once the meeting is over, the recording gets posted on the town website, and the minutes get put up in the ordinary course, again on the town website, so that people can kind of follow along. A lot of towns have also posted meetings on YouTube or other channels like that, just so that the general public can watch them, either in real time or after the fact, even if they don't wish to participate in the meeting by joining the Zoom call. And the other thing that has led to several of the additional executive orders is the premise that for things like referenda or town meetings where there would be in-person voting, there are some difficulties with using an online platform in terms of verification and authentication of the people who are voting, the absence of a secret ballot and so forth. So different procedures have been established through subsequent executive orders to cover those kinds of things.
Now back to where we started, when it rolls over into the land use context, there's a few things that the executive orders provided. It provided ways to provide notice that would ordinarily be more costly and more time consuming in order to be able for a land use commission to take action. And primarily it would be notice that is placed on the web page of the town. In some instances where notice would ordinarily be mailed and you might not have, if you have email addresses, they can be emailed to people. And there's also the ability to put some signage up, which it ordinarily would not be a substitute for mailing notice, but under the executive order it can be. And it gives the ability of towns, if it's necessary, to adopt a regulation that relates to the COVID pandemic. Ordinarily, there are referrals to regional agencies in a 30-day period when they get comment back. That was waived so that commissions could fast track. There still has to be public notice, public hearings, and they have to work that into the virtual meeting mechanism. But it does give the ability, if the town wants to adopt a rule, a regulation, even a temporary regulation that only applies, and I've seen some towns do this, that they adopted a permanent regulation that would enable a delegation to enforcement officers to make decisions that ordinarily would be commission decisions if an emergency is declared. And they wouldn't necessarily have to wait for an emergency order from the governor in order to be able to take that action. But the more, even more flexible executive order that was issued was with an intent to try to give some relief to local restaurants and retailers. And they would ordinarily have a complicated or lengthy administrative process to get approvals. All those requirements were waived, and it gave power to the zoning enforcement officer in most towns, could be someone else, but basically the enforcement official has the ability to issue the permits to allow for outdoor dining or outdoor retail. And DECD has guidelines in terms of how, with capacity that would be, what spacing needs to be, et cetera, et cetera. But basically, the zoning enforcement officer can go out, look at a site, make a judgment about whether it can be in a parking lot, it can be in a sidewalk, it can be on town roads, it can be, and they have to coordinate with town government and state government if it's going to be in a road or a sidewalk. But it really, you know, I don't want to call it the Wild West, but virtually that. There are no rules associated other than the real common sense on the part of the enforcement officer. And a very short period of time, 10-day period to make a decision, either from when it was filed or if the enforcement officer needs more information, they get an additional 10 days after the new information is submitted. And if they don't take action, it's automatically approved. And if they deny it, then there's also a speedy process of an appeal to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which has created some problems we've provided to our towns that sometimes the zoning enforcement officer might want to consult with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we've suggested them not to do that, because if there's going to be an appeal, the commission is going to be the reviewing body, so they shouldn't be directly involved in whether the permit is issued or denied if they're going to be the ones that are going to decide the denial. And the other kinds of things that have come up is and outdoor entertainment. The order specifically says that outdoor entertainment is not allowed unless the local rules already allow it. So if a permit allows it or the local regulations allow it, it can happen. But there have been some breweries and wineries and other places that have just wanted to have events with entertainment. That's not permissible. And the other critical part is the service of alcohol is only in association with dining. So a brewery who wishes to simply have an event and have people social distance and serve beer and not food, that's not something that's permissible under the executive order, and only would be authorized if the local regulations already have it. But they recognize that food trucks, if you bring food trucks in, probably catering, as long as the people who are consuming, you know, the wine or the alcohol or wine or beer from the brewery or the winery in association with food, that's something that's permissible. And then the other thing that it does is, a big question was, you know, who are the COVID police? well, the COVID police can be literally the state police on some of the rules that the executive orders have established. But with respect to some of these local permitting for outdoor dining and the like, there's an executive order that says that the local health district is going to have authority over the facilities that are essentially defined as public health facilities. Restaurants would be among them, salons, things of that nature, and those that are not defined by the order as being direct public health related, things like restaurants, that those would fall under the chief executive officer or the chief executive officer's designee. And so that there is local enforcement powers related to enforcing at least some aspects of these executive orders. And those are the main things that the governor has set forth to try to help municipalities, both help their businesses and help the process of moving things along during the pandemic.
That's certainly a lot of changes in a number of key areas, but I think that's a testament to how adaptable we can be under these circumstances. And it's good to hear that we're able to come up with a fix for these times that are unpredictable. Now that we've covered public meetings and outdoor permits, the next topic is elections, budgets, and town hall meetings, to the extent we didn't go over that yet. Rich, is that something you want to discuss?
Sure. I guess the two things, the kind of the two general categories, the budget and finance type things. Early on in the process, the governor's office recognized that one of the important functions that every town and city goes through during the spring is the formulation and adoption of their annual town budget that takes effect on July 1st. Right at the outset, recognizing that there were going to be issues with implementing virtual meetings and everybody's kind of at a loss as to how to proceed, there was an executive order that allowed an extension of up to 30 days for any of the budget adoption processes that might exist in either a town's ordinances or charters, basically to give them a little bit of breathing room right at the beginning of the process to figure out how they're going to proceed. As a general matter, all of the steps of the budget adoption process that would ordinarily be required continue to be required. It's just that instead of in-person meetings, they've been done virtually. So I've been participated in several towns' budget hearings on Zoom where there were, 200 or more people participating by either by phone or online. The one thing that was the big change, and it was somewhat controversial, but frankly, it was reasonably necessary given the circumstances, is that if the final step in a town's budget adoption process would be an in-person town meeting, the 200 people sitting in the sweaty auditorium voting yes or no, or a referendum, the governor's office has said that you're not going to have that in-person town meeting. You're not going to have that referendum. What you will do instead is the Board of Selectmen or the Town Council and the budget making authority, if it's different, usually the Board of Finance, jointly go through the process, and the legislative body essentially authorizes the Board of Finance at the very end of the process, where all the public input has come in, all of the analysis, all the cutting, the shifting, the adding, and so forth has taken place, essentially directing the Board of Finance to adopt the budget. And that's already occurred in a significant number of the towns in the state. And, frankly, I think people have been very conservative in their budgeting. They've been careful in looking at the amount of the tax increase that they think their residents can withstand, so that has gone on without tremendous controversy. Additional executive orders have allowed the Board of Selectmen or the Town Council, together with the Board of Finance, to take certain other non-budgetary financial actions jointly if a town meeting would be required otherwise. And most recently, there was an executive order that allows just the Board of Selectmen or the Town Council or the RTM to take certain other time-sensitive, non-fiscal actions that would ordinarily have required a town meeting, just basically to prevent the town from, from having property damage or financial loss, sitting around waiting for the opportunity to have in-person meetings again. I think the two things going forward that are going to be important or kind of hot topics for the towns will be how the elections are going to work. The August 11th primary is still within the 6-month time frame of the governor's initial declaration of emergency, so they've basically authorized no excuse absentee voting to be done for the August 11th primary. What the world's going to look like after that and leading up to the November election may require some changes by the legislature if the governor's executive order has expired by that point. The other thing that I've already seen quite a bit of is now that it's warmer out, now that the governor has allowed quote unquote larger gatherings of 10 people indoors, 25 people outdoors, some municipal agencies are saying, well, let's go back to having in-person meetings. We'll have our Wetlands Commission meeting outdoors, everybody's standing around. I think it's going to, I'm advising that you be very cautious going in that regard for two reasons. One, there may be members of the agency who, for health reasons or other reasons, just don't want to go back to the in-person meetings. So having at least a hybrid of a virtual meeting is still going to be best practice to make sure that there's general participation. And the other thing is that, members of the public likewise may not feel comfortable participating in person, and to avoid disenfranchising or preventing them from being able to watch public meetings, you're still going to have to go through the processes of publicizing them and having them broadcast on some kind of virtual platform so that members of the public who would, push the attendance over the 10 or 25 limit would still be able to participate. So it's not like, every meeting you would have had indoors in March, you can now have outdoors in the parking lot or, on a grassy knoll during July. So that's going to be interesting to see it roll out. And with so many things, I think there are going to be people who are kind of pushing the envelope and, try to make sure that everyone does things in a way that minimizes the risk of creating additional unnecessary exposure and also allows for the free public participation by board and commission members and the general public in the process, because these still are public meetings and the public has the right to attend and in some cases participate. So that's kind of where I see short-term and long-term some of the issues coming up.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you both for talking with us today and sharing some of your insights. For anyone who's watching, please feel free to head over to our website and sign up for our client alerts so that you can continue to get information on these topics. We will be adding stuff in the coming weeks, and that way you can stay up to date on all developments concerning the COVID-19 crisis. Thank you, and stay tuned for our next update.
Thank you.
Take care.